Thank you very much, Hannah, and welcome everybody. My name is Dr. Lwanga Elizabeth Nanziri. I am based at the University of Stellenbosch Business School in Cape Town, and I am a board member of AAAWE, which is the Association for the Advancement of African Women Economists. So AAAWE in short. So AAAWE, a little bit about it, is the first and only organization that focuses on building the capacity and skills of African women economists. So we do this by engaging in activities such as creating opportunities for networking, mentoring, assisting members to obtain grants, fellowships, and internships, and facilitating the creation and sharing of knowledge among members. So AAAWE was established in 2012, and by March 2019, we were looking at a membership of about 1,000 class members, representing 39 countries on the African continent and 28 outside of Africa. So 80% of that membership are African women economists, and for the
I think, Elizabeth.
Have you?
You're back. Great.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. So it's just telling you about where AAAWE is. That we have, branches in Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, and Uganda. And membership is open to everybody, irrespective of gender. So please join us and partner with us or your institutions. And we also need financial support to run the activities or realize the objectives of AAAWE. So today, AAAWE and Economists for Transformation are bringing you this platform, and we're hoping that you will find it beneficial. Okay. So we want to make this as engaging as possible for you. So please, as Hannah said, be able to raise your questions in the Q&A or in the chat, and later we can we can answer them. So the theme of our webinar series is going to be strengthening the role of women in economic policy. So our approach in strengthening the role of women is to get more women on the discussion table, and by discussion we meaning the policy table. And as you will see, there are fewer women up in these discussions. And this we would like to do, brother will say, whether you're in academia, you are in politics, you need to, to play your part. So we need the numbers, women. And to do this, we need to provide women with tools. And these tools will include building your confidence, mentorship, at least trying to mentor our leaders, about the technical skills that we acquire in the academic environment. So this webinar is the first in a series of our efforts to create a platform where we can achieve these aforementioned objectives. So to start off, I would like to introduce you our panel, but I'm going to do it differently. I would like them to quickly tell us who they are, in case you were not able to read the flyer. So let me quickly start off with Nomusa. Please do introduce yourself briefly to our audience.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to the audience. I am Nomusa Dibane from the Kingdom of Swaziland, Eswatini. I'm an economist, development economist by training and by practice. I've spent most of my professional life as a civil servant, but I did take a break and went and joined a regional institution responsible for training on macroeconomic issues, and then joined the African Development Bank as an advisor to the board. I'm passionate about climate change issues, gender issues, but more specifically about vulnerable children who are exposed to a lot of challenges. I am a woman, and being a woman means also that I am a mother. And being a mother and a professional, that brings up conflicts sometimes in the professional life. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Nomusa. That's really amazing. Our next panelist is Dr. Zainab, please.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and maybe good evening to some of you. It's really a pleasure to be here to speak to everyone, to share my experiences, but also to hear from you, given that we're all in this interesting, important, but challenging space. So my name is Zainab Usman. I'm the director of a New Africa program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in Washington, D.C. And I am of Nigerian origin. I am, in terms of my profession, I would say that I'm a political economist. So my work sits at the intersection of politics, policy making, and economic outcomes. I'm interested in looking at how politics intersects with policy and shapes economic development outcomes. And my focus is mostly on resource exporting countries in Africa, but also around the world, on energy policy, on digital technologies, and also the changing nature of work. And really my passion, I would say, is in understanding how African countries can build strong, diversified, and modern economies that can create shared prosperity and stability. So any issue that touches on this objective or this outcome, I'm there and I'm interested in working in it or on it. And then very quickly, I was, as I mentioned, I'm of Nigerian origin. I also studied in the UK, and I've been living in Washington, D.C. for the past 5 years. And my background is really a very interdisciplinary. So I started off studying international relations before I kind of moved into economics, which is why I do this kind of political economy work. And I've worked in academia, I've worked at the World Bank in Washington, D.C., and now I'm with a think tank. Yeah, so really looking forward to interacting with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zainab. That is really a rich resume. I would never have done justice to it. Our third panelist is Amma. Amma, who is Dr. Amma Panin? Can you please talk to our guests?
Thanks a lot, Elizabeth. And I must say, that's a question I ask myself most mornings, and I'm yet to find a good answer. But thank you for the introduction, Elizabeth, and thank you, Hannah and Desiree, for organizing this. It's a privilege to be on this panel with Nomusa and Zainab as well. So thanks for bringing us together. So my name is Amma Panin. I'm an assistant professor of economics at the University of Louvain. So there's probably one or two universities people have heard of in Belgium, and I'm in the big French one. So that's how I usually introduce it to people. I've been here for about 1 year now. And before beginning my position, which is a tenure track position in economics, I was at the World Bank. Before that, I did a postdoc in Oxford. And before that, I did my PhD in Berlin. I could keep going back because I've lived in a lot of different countries. I'm actually a Ghanaian citizen, born in Ethiopia, grew up in Botswana and Eswatini. So I'm always very happy to see Nomusa because it reminds me of that part of my life. My research topics focus on behavioral and development economics. So within the broad field of behavioral economics, I study how people make decisions under risk. And in particular, I'm interested in understanding the various coping strategies that people use to deal with uninsured risks. Right now, I'm doing a lot of applications to study how religion is used as a means of coping. And I think I'll end there and looking forward to hearing from everyone. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much to our panelists. This is really rich. I could never even compare with our panelists, so I'm so privileged to be the moderator. My resume will just be very, very thin. I wouldn't even attempt. And now that we know who is in front of us, I think it's only fair for us to know who is sitting on the other side. So with this, would like to get to know you a little bit more. So we're going to launch a poll and we would like to tell us about yourselves. So in that poll, it's going to be basically who you are and what your aspirations are. So please, could you launch the poll for us? There we go. So just check one. There are 3 questions. When you're done, then we can click submit. We want to know who you are. Okay. So Desiree, when everybody's done, you can show the results to us, please.
Sure, Elizabeth. Let's get it going.
Are we almost there? Because I'm not able to see it from here. But welcome. We can see members from Burkina Faso. Several are introducing themselves. So good to have you here. Thank you for joining us. All right, we have a lot of professionals here. Kenya, welcome. Jambo, I think that's the word for Kenya. We have some statisticians here. Who else do we have here? Zimbabwe, wow. Welcome, welcome. Couple of Zimbabweans here. All right. Ethiopia, wow. Welcome, Ethiopia. I think Amma would be able to say something to speak to you because she says she's been there before. Eswatini, oh, another one from the kingdom. Yeah. How are we doing, Desiree? Almost there?
Almost there.
Okay. Nigeria.
30 more
wow.
seconds.
Okay, Nigeria, welcome. Senegal. Bienvenue. Okay. Right. So I think we can close the poll and see who we have. Okay. Côte d'Ivoire, Cameroon. Yes, we do have quite a good representation from the western part of the continent.
And the poll?
Yes, you can. You can end and launch because I can't do it. So you can go ahead. So we can all see.
Second.
Have you launched?
I'm trying to end it.
Okay, University of Aberdeen. We can see. Welcome, welcome everybody. Okay, so this is our poll. So we do have kind of an equal split between PhD students, early career professionals. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a good representation of people working in academia. Oh, wow, great. And then we have some multilateral development institutions, employees here, a few people in government. Oh, the think tank is the least represented. I think Zainab is going to do a whole lot of work to, encourage us to join here. The private sector as equal as government and other, in terms of aspirations for those probably that are doing a PhD. Wow, pretty much everybody wants to go to academia. Amma, what did you give these people? It looks like, yeah, you're winning so far. Government and think tanks, yeah, and others want to work in MDIs. All right, so here we are. Private sector, not so much. NGOs, okay, a little bit. So we do have a lot of academicians here, which is a good thing. And because we have a lot of PhD holders, we also have aspirants to the academe and also MDIs. Well, thank you so much for letting us who you know. This is really impressive. That way we know how to navigate our conversation for today. Okay, so now that we know who you are, I think we'd rather get into a little bit of why we are here today. So what we found, especially in AAAWE, is that some people we have aspirations, we want to be somewhere, and at the same time, we probably don't know how to get there, but it's good to see that majority of people are aspiring to get into academia. What I didn't ask is which part of the world we are in, because academia means different or has different requirements depending on where you are. If you aspire to go to the academic environment in Europe, the USA, and Africa, it is going to be totally different. The requirements are different. So we did not ask that question, but we're hoping that by the end of this the webinar, you will still be aspiring to stay where you've told us you want to be. And for those that are there, we hope that we hope to provide you a platform where you can switch and still contribute to the policy agenda of whichever country you are in, or you find yourself in, or you want to go to. All right. So because of these aspirations, we probably do not know what awaits us. And we would like to take advantage of the panel that we have to get into, understanding what awaits us for those of us that are not yet there, or what we haven't experienced yet, seeing that our panelists at least have got a better experience or stay in the positions that they're in. So in this session, we will have each of the panelists giving us a little bit of, highlights of the qualities and attributes that one requires to get to the positions they are in, perhaps currently, a little bit about the challenges that one is likely to encounter or that they have encountered themselves, and most importantly, how to overcome these challenges. And we believe that by the end of this discussion, in like a few minutes, 15 minutes, call it 15 minutes, we'll get to hear from you and what has stood out for you, and if you still have some lingering questions. So let me once again start off with Nomusa, who is in the political space, but you had her resume earlier. So in setting the scene, Nomusa, maybe my question would be, how did you even end up in government, seeing, a little bit of where you've been, but how did you end up there? Was it your desire? Was it by default? Was it accidental? What are some of the attributes, or qualities that one would need, or that have helped you personally to get to this particular position? Challenges that you have encountered, especially when you found yourself in a predominantly maybe male environment, and how have you overcome them? Quite a loaded question, but we hope that you can say something to us to inspire us in about 5 minutes. The floor is yours, Nomusa.
Thanks, thanks, Liz. I wouldn't say it was an easy route, but at the same time, very interesting. I started off as an agricultural economist, and I joined government as my first employer when I left university. That was an advantage to me because as a rural girl, it also exposed me to different livelihoods and set me up for policy in terms of how then government intervenes, especially because government is supposed to be a structure that is a jack of all trades, must be open to national organizations, is a member and must take care of its own, and also must take care of the less fortunate. So that exposed me to quite a lot. And then it brought to me the issue of being a professional, which is also doing the job with the human face. Attributes. What attributes got me to where I am? First, it's the eagerness to learn. And when you've learned, use what you have learned and put it into practice. In this, before you go up the ladder, going up the ladder, in my case, wasn't like gender-driven, women first or men first, but it was an issue of hard work, being able to apply yourself, an interest in statistics or data. Understand data, scrutinize data, use data, because statistics or data tells a story on its own. And then the other thing, which also is important, is being analytical, not emotional. Sometimes you can't help being emotional, but being analytical and let the analysis tell the story. And then have presentation skills. For me, that was an advantage, and also being fluent, both in English and in my language, and being able to work with a team. So professionally, doing a lot of work in analysis helped me to tell my story using my analytical skills. At the same time, as I said, that being a rural person and also having started work in the Ministry of Agriculture made me more compassionate. And being compassionate, it also helped in understanding that not all people are equal and not all people face same opportunities. But then how do you work with those that are faced with challenges? Attributes and qualities. I'm a self-driven person, self-motivated. I'm eager to find out. And the other thing is that I believe there is always something new to learn all the time. And reading, if you find some script, read. And read documents, whether it's the IMF, it's the World Bank, and not be lazy to read. And also, as you go up the ladder, you must be able to take decisions. Other decisions are harsh. And once you've taken that decision, you must be able to stand for that decision and be able to review it in case the decision taken does not actually you cannot implement it, or when during implementing the results you expect. And then there was the not being discriminatory, you know, we're a homogeneous group, yes, but we also have our own differences. And being open, not to really bias, but be able to look at things from a human perspective. I said I'm compassionate about children, especially the vulnerable ones, because I've seen a lot of poverty. And I've seen how then they fall through the cracks. And my other thing, one of the qualities I have is that I believe that everyone is capable. So as I went up my career, I got into levels of having to lead teams and be a team leader. But that doesn't come easy, especially when you are a woman and a mother. Sometimes you have to attend meetings at awkward times. And sometimes you are a lone voice on an issue. But it has been a journey where I have learned not to see myself as a human, as a woman first, but as a professional first, and being open to criticism. And also being able to navigate my path and being able to tell different stories from different levels. And when you get to the political level, it becomes more challenging. In brief, that has been my path to the level where I was. Thank you.
Wow. Quite a full bag there, and I'm hoping that our audience has listened. I think what I've picked up a couple of points here: hard work, and I think hard work, and you'll hear a lot of people talking about it, and not lazing around just because we're women. The other is being analytical and not being emotional. And I think they say women, we're emotional beings, but I think Nomusa is telling us that if you want to end up where she is, her journey has been characterized by high level of analysis as opposed to emotions. Not that she's not emotional, she's a mother, as she said. Confidence, and I must say that, confidence is not going to come from, from the sky. It's not coming from a vacuum. You can only be confident if you empower yourself with knowledge, so you can stand firmly, behind what you're saying. And that's what she said. You stand firm, even if you're the lone voice, to support your views. So a lot of reading. And I think because we have a lot of PhDs or PhD holders here, we know what it means to, read and acquire knowledge. Self-motivation, which is another attribute. Thank you so much, Nomusa, for sharing that with us. I think there are lots of questions. I can see hands up already, but let's give a chance to the rest of our panelists and let's prepare our questions in time. So going off to Zainab, I personally met Zainab somewhere within DC, but the one thing that I think I missed to hear when she was introducing herself was the fact that she was also a young professional. So for those of you that, that are aspirant to go to the World Bank, or you probably have heard of the Young Professionals program at the World Bank, she was one of them and graduated top of the class. So that bit, she then moved into, she's been moving up. What I can say is that she's moving vertically, and I like that vertical movement. So to Zainab, I'll then say, what has helped you move that journey? Because it looks like it's, yes, it fits in with what you have studied, perhaps your interests, but we like to believe that perhaps your journey is not like Nomusa's. What can you tell some of us? We saw that there are few people that are in think tanks that are even aspirant to go to think tanks. I don't know why, but I'm hoping that by the end of your few minutes, you'll have convinced a few to join you. So what has helped you to go up the ladder the way you have very fast? And what are some of the challenges and how can we overcome them and prepare better? Yeah. Zainab.
Great. Let me try to address that question to the best of my ability. So as I mentioned earlier, I worked at the World Bank for a bit. I joined through the Young Professionals program. Then I graduated, became a public sector specialist, and worked with the Office of the Chief Economist for the Africa region. And that was where I met Elizabeth and Nomusa and also Amma, before I then left the World Bank late last year to join the Carnegie Endowment. But before I go into my responses to Elizabeth's questions, what I also say is, because I saw the results of the poll, and I think almost like 53% of respondents aim to or aspire to work with a multilateral institution. And then very, very few want to work with think tanks. And I think, of course, there are structural reasons for that. That in Africa, for now, think tanks are still not very, there are a couple here and there in South Africa, in Ghana, and Nigeria, maybe a few in Kenya here and there, but, they're not yet really fully integrated in whether it's the discourse or the design or the implementation of policy as they are in the United States. And hopefully, over the coming years, think tanks are going to play a much bigger role. They will develop and grow in Africa. So I thought to put that, to mention that before I get into my responses. So maybe I'll just outline 5 key things in terms of perhaps attributes and qualities that have helped me move up. But before I mention the 5, I think I'll mention one, which I think is very important. Sometimes we underestimate it, but it's a fact of life. There's luck. Just being at the right place at the right time and being prepared. It's I think the famous, is it Greek or Roman philosopher who said, luck is when opportunity meets preparation. So basically you have to be prepared and be waiting. And then when that opportunity comes, you are prepared. So you also have to do your own part. And I say this because, I know, over the past couple of years, in fact, over the past decade, I've met many, many brilliant people who are more, I cannot even compare to them at all. And, for some reason or the other, they've just not quite made it. They've not quite taken off. And I hope their time comes. So I really want to emphasize that sometimes there are things that are beyond our control. But having said that, maybe there are 5 key things that I'll mention that, at least reflecting on my life and my experience and seeing other people's experiences, that maybe those factors might have helped. So the first really is that you have to figure out who you are. And I think that is so important, meaning that you have to, reflect whether it's on your life experiences, whether it's your upbringing, whether it's, whatever it is that helps define your identity, you have to own it and you have to embrace it. And, you have to use that to figure out where it is that you're going to. So if you really sometimes looking at yourself in the mirror and, acknowledging who you are, where you've come from, and then where you're heading to, I think that is so important. Because if you don't answer that question, if you don't, first of all, pose that question to yourself and then answer it, it's going to be a lot of confusion in your life. And now I almost sound like a preacher or a cleric. Figure out who you are, be in tune with your emotions and all of that. But no, very seriously. Otherwise, you keep jumping from one thing to another. And I've seen people like that, jumping from one thing to another to the next, not being able to decide, being indecisive, because they are letting other people decide for them. So you have to figure out who you are, so you decide where you're going to. I think that is very, very important. And, to be fair, it's not always easy being able to do that. It's not something you figure out in a day or two. It's a constant process of searching and asking that question. It might take a couple of months or even a year or two for you to figure out who you are, what you can do, and where you're headed. So that's number one, I would say. The second thing then is when you're able to address that question is really figuring out if you want to do work that matters. At least for my own experience and my own journey so far, that has always been core to what I've done and to what I'm doing, that I want to do work that matters. Because I know where I come from. I come from Nigeria. Even in Nigeria, I come from northern Nigeria, which, with all the problems in Nigeria, a lot of those problems are concentrated in northern Nigeria. It's poverty, it's conflict. There are also very, very good things about northern Nigeria, but, I put that, I know that there are a lot of issues there. There's a lot of work to be done. And of course, that cuts across not just the whole of Nigeria, but also West Africa and the African continent too. That there's so much work that needs to be done. So for me, doing work that matters has always been central to what I've chosen to do. And so for all of you as well, whether your pathway is via academia or via multilateral development agencies or an NGO or a think tank, if that's what you want to do, then maybe thinking about doing work that matters is key. And I'll give you an example. The various countries in Africa, sub-regions, are all grappling with issues around, trying to generate security, stability and prosperity for their people, trying to increase the productivity of their economies. They're trying to create productive jobs, resolve conflicts, and all these things. If you want to do work that matters, those are all questions that need to be addressed. So that's number two, I would say, doing work that matters. Then probably number three is once you figured out who you are, and maybe the subject matter, the area where you want to focus on, is then you want to start really building a track record, right? A track record in terms of building credibility and having integrity, so that people in the field know you, whether it's through your publications, through projects you're involved in. You need to start consciously and deliberately building a track record. And what does that entail? I think Nomusa covered some of those areas. So at the core of it, especially if you're starting out, you need analytical skills, data analysis, whether it's data analysis, whether it's statistics, whether it's, qualitative analysis, whatever it is, you have to be analytical. You have to be able to go through vast amounts of information, organize this in a meaningful way. That is basically what being analytical means, and coming up with insights or conclusions or findings. Then I think as you go up, you start working in a team, you move from your entry-level position, whether it's as an intern or as an analyst, then you start working in a team. Working with others is so essential. You have to be able to learn that. Negotiation, compromise, those are key skills to have. Then communications and presentation skills, those are also key. I think Nomusa mentioned that. And then as you go further up, being able to manage people is also something you have to take into account. And that is, I think sometimes that is really underemphasized. When you start getting to a position of seniority, You just think that people are there to work for you. No, you have to think about managing people, understanding what the maybe the preferences or the aspirations of your team members are, being able to incentivize them, getting the best out of them, but also being invested in their career. So, getting those management skills, I think, are key. But, this is something you do gradually. It is really a journey, it's a journey. I would say it's maybe a marathon, not a sprint. And as you move to the next level, you will know what kind of skills you need, and you need to invest in that. Then maybe a fourth thing I'll mention is overall, I think it helps to be bold, because if you want to have impact, whether in academia, whether in global development, in a multilateral agency, or in think tanks, working in policy or in government, I think being bold helps on certain things. So don't be afraid to tackle big issues. If you're working on trade, think about the big trade issues, big trade barriers, challenges, try to address them, or at least contribute to providing insights on how to address these issues, right? Don't be afraid to take positions on certain things. Perhaps there might be situations or areas where maybe you're too junior, or it's just not the right place and time to boldly articulate where you stand on certain things. But when certain opportunities present themselves, do take a position, make it known where you stand and what you stand for, because that is what is going to distinguish you from everyone else, right? But be ambitious, be bold, but don't be reckless. I think there's a fine line between those two. So being bold is what I would say is a fourth thing to keep in mind. And then finally, I think I would like to echo what Nomusa mentioned about continuous learning. Given the world we're in, with new technologies, new challenges, new opportunities, so much is changing rapidly. We have to continue learning. You have to constantly challenge yourself, stimulate your mind, stay engaged, sharpen your analytical skills. It has to be continuous. You cannot stop. So I'm going to stop there in terms of, thinking about the qualities and the attributes that, at least also reflecting on my own experience, have helped in addition to luck. And I think someone finally provided the right what is it, that proverb, that saying that I started with. Our success is when luck meets opportunity. I still can't.
When preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah, I still can't get it. But yeah, I think that is just very, very apt. Like, you just have to be prepared for those opportunities to come. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Zainab. This is really emotional, but they say we shouldn't be emotional. But I mean, it's one of those things where when you find somebody really speaking to you and you're like, wow, so this is our wow moment, our aha moment. And I picked up a few things, and you can see that regardless of where you are, which journal, which path you take, some attributes cut across. So Zainab talks about opportunity, which is luck, but I do agree 100%. We need to prepare. Us going to school and acquiring these technical skills is one way of preparation. But the other, I think, being in the right place that you mentioned is quite often what we term as, or when we talk about networking, that is what we're trying to do, creating the opportunity for you, given the preparation that you have undertaken. And I think as a PhD student, especially for those of you that are outside of the African continent, this is quite emphasized. When you're sent to conferences, when you're sent to workshops or discussions, they're trying to create a network for you, which you should leverage to move forward. And it is through that networking that people get to know who you are. How will they know who you are? It's because of the work that you have done, which Zainab has mentioned. Who are you? People will ask you that question. Who are you? Oh, I'm so and so. I work on this and this. So you are positioning yourself or telling those people who you are, what you have done in the network. And who knows, there might be your success story. And I think I'm one of those people that moved up the ladder just because of that, networking, but being prepared as well. And there's something that I think Zainab brings out, something to do with doing work that matters, very, very critical. We often hear about being passionate, but what are you passionate about? Are you passionate about things that matter or things that you want? Because the things that you want might not necessarily matter. And you'd ask the question, I think, like somebody asked, how do I know what matters? Continuous learning, continuous reading, read extensively. What are the current affairs? Don't stay stuck in the old ways of doing things. I think what Zainab did mention to you is that she was part of a team that undertook research on the future of work. If you haven't seen that, that research, it's really amazing. I think you should read it. So she knows what she's talking about. Be bold, I think, is the same as being confident. You can only be bold if you're confident with what you're saying. Thank you so much, Zainab, for that inspiration. And now I'd like to turn to Amma, who is an assistant professor. For those maybe in the African continent, we talk about an assistant professor as a senior lecturer. I think that's the terminology that's used. But Amma also mentions that she was at the World Bank as well, in pretty much the same office. And she was, I think I met her briefly in Oxford. So Amma is juggling between academia, and she's also, in the policy space, she's constantly within the World Bank, well, here and there. So Amma, one question that I would have for you is, what is the contribution that being in the policy space constantly, what contribution does it have on your academic work? Obviously, over and above the qualities that you think got you to where you are, the challenges that you have met, maybe, I hope not, but challenges maybe along the way, challenges of where you are, maybe. How can somebody navigate those challenges? You see a lot of people wanting to come to the academic world. Please talk to them and see, put their minds at ease, or rather help them to decide whether they should stick with that aspiration, or they might as well cross over to Zainab's environment. So a little bit of that. What is the contribution? Because many people in academia end up maybe engaging in consultancies, but one would wonder what is the contribution? It probably goes whichever way. I don't know, it goes from consultancies to your academic work, or from the academic work to the consultancies that you're engaged in. The floor is yours, Amma.
Great. Well, thank you, Elizabeth, and thanks again, Nomusa and Zainab. I filled pages, literal pages, with notes listening to both of you. So I'll tell you a bit about my evaluation of the qualities and the challenges that have come with me as I've taken my path towards academia. The first thing I want to say, though, is a direct echo of Zainab's opening. I think a lot of luck has come my way. And I should say that when I say luck, I speak with my mother in terms of God's blessings. So I would say, think of it however you'd like to frame this element that is almost beyond your control. But what is in your control is the preparation. And it's knowing who you are, to echo what Zainab said. It's knowing what you want to be and making sure that people know that as well. So I'll end with a sub-point on talking about the role of other people in your path. But I did want to open with saying, although I talk about my path here, a lot of it feels like some of it has been out of my control, and I'm grateful for all the processes and people who brought me here. So to think about some of the qualities that I think are important in an academic career, the first and foremost one that I'd like to emphasize to everyone is getting the technical skills in place. This has already come up in Zainab and Nomusa's contributions, but I think it's particularly important in academia because, in a sense, that's that's what we are doing. That's what we are here for in the research world. I see my contribution as being someone who tries to stay at the frontier of research and tries to push that frontier a bit forward. And I think the only way to do that is to ensure that I've tried to keep at it. So to constantly be reading, constantly be learning, constantly be reskilling. When I was doing my PhD, one of the professors said, this is probably the last time you're going to have so much time only to build your technical skills. And at the time I thought, this sounds crazy because I feel really, really busy. There's no way this is true. But it turns out it was true. I have less time now to open an econometrics book and, figure out what's going on with the new work on standard errors, because now I have competing interests. I have students to supervise, I have teaching to do, I have research projects where I've taken on a different role. But with all that said, I think it is still important to try to find that time to make sure you're not being left behind in terms of the technical work. So the main things I want to say under strong technical skills are use the time in your PhD and any other time that you have dedicated for training to take that training. It's almost impossible that you'll ever know too much. So rather take the opportunity to know more and to learn from people who are there to share their knowledge with you. A large part of why I wanted to open with focusing on technical skills, which Zainab and Nomusa both mentioned, is because I think that's something that for me personally leads to confidence. So again, this is nothing new. It has come up in the discussion. And I think part of the reason we probably all go back to it is it is such an important attribute to be able to have to navigate what might otherwise be difficult situations. So in the prompts of this workshop, we were also asked to reflect on what is it like to be a woman and what is it like to be an African woman in the spaces we are in. So my undergrad degree was in the US in mathematics. Then I did a master's in France. I did my PhD in Berlin. I'm now working in an economics department in Belgium. I can tell you that I've probably been one of 20 women, if that's the ratio in most places. In some departments, it's even worse. In my department now, there are 2 women and 40 economists, and very, very few people from Africa in any of these settings. So it's easy to stand out, and it's easy to meet people who would have prejudices about where I'm coming from. But one thing that I do have, and one thing that I think gives me confidence, is I do think I've spent a lot of time with my econometrics textbooks. I think I know I can be the person in the seminar who understands what's going on with the crazy standard errors. I know I worked through all the proofs in my microeconomic theory class. And it's that sort of solid foundation that I think helps me a lot in situations where I'm reacting to other people's reactions to me as a person who doesn't look typical of their impression of, who's someone who does mathematics and economics. And so it's something I encourage you, build those technical skills to have that confidence. The other thing that I think contributes to confidence is having the reassurance in yourself that you're doing the things that you want to do. So again, I'm echoing a lot of what Zainab says. I told you I took 2 pages of notes, so there we go. But so when I think about the confidence and when I think about how I, how I react to being very much, a visible minority in the spaces I work with, I have spent quite a lot of time thinking about, do I want to be in academia? And do I think I deserve to be here? And I think the answer I've come to is yes. And I try to reaffirm that every day. So I thought I'd tell you a bit about my process of engaging in this sort of search to understand, is this what I want to do? So after my undergrad, so I actually went to my undergrad. I left Eswatini to the US, studying engineering. That was my goal. And the idea was, I would like to come back to one of the countries I consider home and be a civil engineer and build bridges and contribute in that way. And I think what sort of started dawning on me was the constraint was not necessarily technical knowledge about how to build bridges, but rather sort of understanding how can we structure the systems to maintain those bridges, to train engineers so that if I think this is something I want to do, I don't have to leave home to go and learn that. So that was my transition from a purely like mathematical STEM type path towards economics. And I knew quite early on that I probably wanted to do research because what I saw as a constraint was understanding. But my process of figuring out exactly what type of research I want to do wasn't a sort of, I'm in my second year of my undergrad, I want to have a research career, and then I'm going to go there directly. After my undergrad, I spent 1 year in a research fellowship in Senegal, working with a think tank there, working in an evaluation position. And that was incredibly helpful to give me a chance to see what's the sort of work that economists are doing in the field. And it was incredibly helpful for me also to spend time in another African country as a professional and to have that experience. So I took my 1 year fellowship into my master's. It was typical training for econ PhD, super technical. This is where I say, take the chance, even though it feels brutal at times. But having had my 1 year fellowship was very helpful for me to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So it's something that I think a lot of my peers didn't have to think, if we spend time fighting with these proofs, what do we get out of it? I had a sense of what I'd get out of it, having done my fellowship, having spent a lot of time working in the field in Senegal. So then directly after my master's, I didn't go straight into a PhD. I spent 1 year working with the think tank in Brussels. And again, that was an opportunity that I tried to take in order to see what are the different ways of doing research and what are the different ways that my interests can contribute to the wider research agenda. After my year with the think tank, that's when I did my PhD. And then after my PhD, I spent time doing a postdoc and then joined the World Bank. So this is my path towards my academic position. And in all these different positions that were a step away from academia, but still very research heavy, the question I was asking myself was always, what are the ways I can do research, given that I know this is what I want to do, and given this is how I feel like I can contribute to the world. I hope I can, still not sure, but it's how I feel. It's the best way I think I can contribute. What are some of the different ways? And so it felt very natural for me last year to step into my university position, knowing that I had tried a variety of other things and I had tested myself in a variety of other positions and sort of pushed myself to those limits. And so I could step into this position with more confidence again, knowing that this is where I want to be and this is how I want to shape my contribution. And so the one thing I would say with being able to have these work experiences is, in so many cases, it's like touch and go whether to get the visa or not, and what's going to happen at the end of the year. And so I strongly encourage people to think about ways to push themselves, but to ensure that you have an exit strategy. So I am not here to say, throw caution to the wind and go and do a gap year in Costa Rica. But I am saying, push yourself to learn things while staying on the path that you've set yourself out for your goals and for your career. So that's the second part of confidence. And that's what will bring me to my final contribution, which is thinking about the question Elizabeth posed to me, which is what has being in the policy space brought to my academic work, or what has my academic work brought to my work in the policy space? And as you probably have a sense of, given everything I've said so far, I think I've used my time working in policy to help myself better understand what types of contributions my research can make. As you've probably got a sense of, given how much I focused on like econometrics and so on, I could very easily spend my life as a total geek coding in R and like figuring out standard errors. I realized that's not what I want to do with my life. I think I would enjoy it, but it's not the long-term contributions I'd want to make. I think my time at the World Bank was very instrumental for me to think of some of the bigger pictures, the bigger questions. So as Zainab mentioned, when we think about finding work that matters, it was helpful for me to see what are some of the big challenges that are facing policymakers? What are some of the questions that need an answer? And those are some of the questions that I've taken with me to try to think, given my interests, given my skills, given the resources I have at a university, how can I help to answer those questions? And so it's really helped me shape what my research agenda will be, away from something very abstract, I think, towards something that might hopefully answer questions that are necessary. So I think I'll end there now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amma. I like the point that you made, that you're not asking us to take gap years, because I think I was almost thinking about that, but thank you for telling us to stay where we are. It's another rich experience, you know. Even though I met Amma, I didn't realize that she was still on, you know, on her journey, and that one, or the two stops, or the two classes where I met her were just her stops. You know, one was in Oxford, and the other, I think I didn't meet her at the bank, but yeah, she joined later. So she's made a lot of stops than many of us maybe have met. Those of us that have ended up in academia. For majority of the people, maybe it might be a case of you finish your PhD and voila, you are in academia. Other people, it could be a journey like hers. Others, it could be a case of you moving from private sector, like I did, into academia. So the journey is not necessarily linear. It's just all over the place, just to use high econometrics words. So there's some non-linearities. You go up, you go down, and you end up wherever. But just to pick up on a few things, I think she started off with the perils of an academic. You don't have time. And personally, I long for my postdoc days. That's when they say, you know, you won't have this time back. I do agree with you 100%, Amma. So use your time. There's time for everything. So says the Bible, for those of you that read it. So you have this time. Ask yourself, when I'm here, what is it that I'm getting? How much can I get out of this place, of this stage in my life? Because I might never have this time. If you're going into academia, that's going to be very, very true. Okay, she also mentions that it's lonely up there, but how can you cope with that loneliness? Surround yourself with knowledge, and you will definitely attract people. They will come to you, and you will no longer feel lonely. You'll be useful. You can only be useful when you have something to offer. I think let's be bold about some of these things. You need to offer something. I always say that even when they say there's a, you know, the gender card is working for us, it can only help me to go through this door. What it does, it probably shortens my queue, because the queue has these macho guys. They already know the game. You don't know, so they're lining up ahead of you and they're fighting. You're all fighting to get into that building or that room. So the gender card, at some point where it exists, it only allows you perhaps to get through the door. But once you do cross over onto the other side where you want to be, it's equal. You have to fight out. It's, you got knowledge, you can stand up firmly, you are bold. They've all mentioned something called boldness. I think, ladies, we need to get out of this. Yes, this is what our cultures maybe tell us. In Africa, you're all laid back. I'm not saying you're not humble. It's not a lack of humility, but it's all about being confident. And that lacks in many of our ladies. Somebody may be very knowledgeable, but standing up and exuding that confidence and being able to stand firm and give or contribute is probably sometimes lacking amongst some of us. So it can be lonely, all right, but you can overcome that loneliness with knowledge. I think it has cut across. The passion, yes, comes up. I mentioned passionate about what matters, but also when you do something, do it with passion. Only then will you be able to deliver meaningfully, all right? Then research to policy. So that last bit, we all do research, and usually they ask, what's your contribution to policy? Yeah, what can you make? What recommendations would you make to policymakers? Nomusa is sitting there, and she can tell you, she can attest to that yes, policymakers rely on us researchers. So it's quite rich, and I'd like to thank our panelists so much. Thank you so much. There's something else that has cut across our panelists, something to do with your identity. I think you need to do an identity mapping. We normally find that in leadership, where they say you have the given attributes or the characteristics who you are. Okay, I'm an African woman, Black, so your gender, you didn't ask to be born where you were. This is given. Yeah, you are educated in Africa, and so if you have that, you can. The next step is what the next step would be the chosen. What do I choose? You now have an opportunity to at least use what you have or who you are to choose where you want to be or who you want to be. If I know I'm born and bred in Africa and I'm an African woman, Black, I want to move over to the other part of the world, I need to choose wisely to know what to add on to that to be able to become competitive in some of these environments that we find ourselves in. But there is the core. What is your core? What is at your core? Are you a hardworking person or are you just a laid back person? Because none of these ladies is talking about, oh, sit back and it all come to you. No, there's some boldness, confidence, hard work, okay? So we need to do some identity mapping as soon as you know who you are, and it will help you to understand whether you can achieve your aspirations, because you can get there through these platforms that we're giving you. Oh, gender, guys, ladies, come, let's go. But when you get there, you might be a disappointment to everybody. So at this point in time, I'd like to open it up for questions. I can see that it became so interesting. I didn't want to stop anybody. We might now almost be running out of time, but no, let's give us an opportunity to answer, to ask and answer your questions. And I'd like my panelists to at least look through the Q&A. Nomusa, you seem to be having a couple of questions. So let's start with you while the rest of my panelists do read through the Q&A session platform. So the question for Nomusa, that in your career path, you might face the lack of opportunities as from rural areas. The tribes, like my story, is okay. I see this is anonymous. So the question is, how do you take strength from this level to the place you are right now, especially as you said, woman has to be analytical too. We faced more stereotypes, standing up to spread this voice. Any tips? And I think similar to that, there is a person who also touched on something about, in simple words, maybe marriage. So we have these aspirations, but in the African sense, you're also required, to think about that space. Nomusa, are you able to read and maybe answer that? There's another question here. Politicians are already swamped by evidence from academia. There is a lot of meaningful or impactful research generated on a daily by researchers, but there is only so much that politicians can do within their tenure. How best can researchers capture the attention of policymakers to inform decision-making at the macro level? So Nomusa, you might start with those questions. Meanwhile, Zainab and Amma, from your experiences, how do you compare the quality of work, mainly published work and outputs, between academia and multilateral development agencies or non-academia? Academia is faulted for being ahead of time and fixated on publishing high quality work that the real world is barely ready to digest. Multilateral agencies are more hands-on and impactful, but get a lot of backlash in terms of quality. So there's clearly a trade-off that researchers should consider before making the switch. I think, yeah, I'll throw that to Zainab. So Nomusa, may we please start with you with the questions, whatever you made out of them, those two, for our, at least, audience. Thank you, Nomusa.
Okay, thank you, Liz. May I start with the one about how do you get the politicians to use results of the academia and some research institutions. Yes, politicians. I think, okay, I'm not, okay, I would say research work is necessary and important to inform policy decisions. However, we do have some governments that do not necessarily even respect their own internal analysis. In the case of the independent research work, it is important to have a buy-in from lower levels in government. That is my experience. So that work can be incorporated in the initial analytical work of the officers in that particular ministry. Because sometimes if you go straight into the politician, pardon me, understand I'm talking from a perspective of a non-party state. So that's my experience. I would take it that in a government where there are parties, political parties, that research work maybe can be used to make the political policy decision of that particular party. But in a non-party state, what I have experienced is that it's important for that institution because they are aligned to a certain sector, that sector to take that particular work during consultations. That's how we've been doing it. So it forms part and parcel of the initial work. And then the other thing, it's also important for that institution to have credibility, reputable work, not necessarily to to repeat what has been done before. But relationships, networking, consultations are key in ensuring that that work is part of the sectoral work that has been worked out. Then the second one, on the career path, I would admit it's not easy in terms of, especially now with the economic performance that countries are experiencing, and also the level of networking. However, I wish to say that it is important to have an open mind about what else you can do if you cannot be able to find a job. We have an education system which says you must be employed, but sometimes you may not find the employment in the professional training that you have done. And self-employment may be another opportunity. But it is a tough world where hustling now has become the name of the game. May I end there?
Thank you so much, Nomusa, for those for that contribution and the responses. I'm hoping that the ladies that asked those questions have gotten some takeaways. There are quite a lot of questions here for ladies that are perhaps completing their PhDs and all thinking about these think tanks and the challenges of think tanks, as Zainab mentioned. And I think Zainab, you're also reading what I'm reading. At least let me give you the flow, because we really need to see more ladies or more people coming into the think tanks. It's one environment where surely we can contribute to policy. The floor is yours, Zainab, please.
Yeah, so a couple of questions have come in through the Q&A space and also the chat, because I think those are two different ones. So I'm going to combine the questions, at least that I've received and addressed to me, in two. So bucket one is really around how do you figure out what matters so that you position yourself to work in that space. And I think there's no easy way to doing that, but maybe what could help is, after you've done that mapping and figured out who you are, what you're interested in, and what you can do. This is the other thing. And, so it's not always easy to be honest with yourself between what you aspire to do, what you want to do, and what you can actually do. Those are two very different things. And it requires a great deal of honesty to ourselves. Some people are very, very numerical. They're very numerate. They're good with numbers and great. Some people are kind of okay with numbers. They're okay. I mean, they're not bad. They're okay. They can, but that's not their natural strength. Some are really good with people. They're really, really good with people. Like, they're extroverts. You communicate well. You mobilize people together. Some are just executors. And I'm presenting these profiles with people in mind. There are people I've met who some can just execute. You give them something and they'll get it done, right? So maybe even figuring out, and like I said earlier, it's not always easy to figure that out. It's not something you do in a day or no, but gradually you just start to figure out, look, I'm good with this. I enjoy doing this and I don't enjoy doing that. And ultimately you want to be in a position, you want to be doing work and you want to be in a job where there's as much alignment as possible between your interests, your passions, your interests and passions, and your capabilities. And that's the best. You're just going to fly. You're going to be a star when you have that alignment, but it requires a great deal of honesty. So that's one aspect of it. Then the other aspect of it is, honestly, just listen to what people are saying, read, follow the policy debates in your country, whether if you're interested in doing country level work or maybe sub-regional work, follow the debates there, understand what the challenges are and try to align the work that you're doing or the work that you want to do with that. And it's not an easy thing. This is why I mentioned earlier that it takes a bit of being bold. And you may not even realize that you're being bold, but people will say that to you, that for you to be able to say, look, this is what I'm interested in doing and I'm going to pursue it. It requires a great deal of confidence. Like, I've been told a number of times, oh, you're so ambitious, you're so bold. And I'm like, but I don't wake up in the morning with the intention of being bold or ambitious. I'm just doing what I think is important based on where I come from. I think that's what I want to do. And if, again, with some luck, I'm able to choose. I'm able to choose things that I can do or things that I want to do and things that I don't want to do. So it takes a bit of time to get there, but, you have to be deliberate. Listen to policy debates. Listen to what policymakers are saying and try to figure out how you can, help address those issues. So that's kind of bucket number one. And then bucket number two is really around, what's the difference between a multilateral development agency and a think tank? How do you get into the World Bank? Like, what was my experience at the World Bank? Why did I leave? All of those. So let me try to see if I can address those questions very quickly. So maybe to begin with, let me quickly explain what is the difference between a place like the World Bank and a place like the Carnegie Endowment. Because for me, there's actually a lot of overlap between what I did at the World Bank and what I'm doing now, at least in terms of the subject matter and the substance of work. So, the political economy analysis I was doing at the World Bank, some of the publications I worked on, some of the analytical work I did there, I'm kind of carrying that forward at Carnegie Endowment. So in terms of perhaps the scholarly aspect of the work, there are some overlaps there. But then there are also significant differences because the World Bank ultimately is a bank. People often forget that because the World Bank does so much. It does the projects, it does reports, people publish papers, they forget. Sometimes you even ask people who want to join the World Bank, and I'm sure people on this call too, what do you think the World Bank does? Not everyone knows. Some people know, not everyone knows. At the core of it, it is a bank, but it is not a commercial bank, right? It is a policy bank. It is a development bank. It provides concessional financing to developing countries to do projects in some cases, and sometimes those loans are for budget support, right? They support the budgets of government. So that is the core of the business. Then around it, there's all this other auxiliary work, like the analytical work, reports that are published, oftentimes to support that lending, right? There's also a research department at the World Bank, DEC, it's called, that does a lot of econometrics analysis. It's almost like an econ department, right? In a maybe middle ranking or upper ranking university. But even the analytical work itself is often meant to support the lending, which is why, as someone asked a question, that why is analytical work at institutions like the World Bank, sometimes the quality varies. The quality is not really standard, and there's a reason for that. I don't want to go into too much details on that. And then it's also a large institution. It's a bureaucracy. There are hierarchies. It's almost like a combination of a Ministry of Finance and IBM is the way I like to think of it. So it's like a government bureaucracy, but it's also like a private sector entity. One of those established, Microsoft or IBM, I would say. It's like a combination of the two. Whereas a think tank is much smaller, even though, there's the analytical work that is thematic, especially if the work is around issues on economic development, economic policy, there are a lot of overlaps. But I think there are significant differences in the sense that the work that we produce, we use that to influence policy. We use that to convene dialogues with stakeholders and policymakers. And perhaps a key difference then with the World Bank is oftentimes, especially when you are at a lower level or mid-level position, your counterparts in government are often the technical people in a ministry. Let's say you're in the water resources global practice. Your counterpart would be like maybe the director in a ministry of Ministry of Water Resources in a country, or you would be dealing with a director in a Ministry of Finance. But maybe when you're negotiating that project, there would be meetings with a Minister of Finance or the Minister for Water Resources. But you would be dealing with like the mid-level technical people, civil servants, bureaucrats in a country. So with a think tank, the dialogues, the work that we do is a bit higher level because a lot of it is like strategy, policy design, influencing negotiation in addition to the technical and analytical work. But it is aimed at an audience that is kind of much higher placed, I would say. We're dealing maybe with ministers or with vice presidents. So there's another skill set that is involved, on that front, building relationships, negotiating and things like that. So I think there was a final question that came in. Someone asked directly, why did I leave the World Bank and join the think tank? And I get that question a lot. In fact, when I was leaving the World Bank, a lot of people asked that question. Some thought I was a bit crazy. But as I mentioned earlier, life is all about opportunity or opportunities, being prepared. An opportunity comes up, you evaluate based on what you've defined earlier about who you are and where you want to go to. And an opportunity came up to join the Carnegie Endowment, not only to join the Africa program, but to actually set up, build, manage, and run the Africa program. And the realization that this Africa program is going to, the idea is to do work around the areas that I care about, political economy of development, energy policy, economic policy, trade, technology, Africa's external relations. Those are all the things that I'm interested in on a normal day. So it just seemed like an opportunity that dropped on my lap, and I was like, I'm going to take it. The World Bank is a large institution in between a Ministry of Finance and IBM. It's going to be there for a while. I can always go back. I have my relationships with people, which is the other thing to really emphasize in this discussion today. Building and managing relationships with people is so important. I would not be where I am without allies. I would call them allies, friends, I don't even want to use the word mentor. I feel like it's been overused and abused. I would use the word ally, because there are people that I don't speak to them for 2 years, but I know when I call them and I want something, they will drop everything and do it for me. Same goes for them. Like if they call me today, I will do anything. And you would be surprised, a lot of these people are not even Africans. We've just built a relationship. People, one of the people I was really looking up to when I was at the World Bank was from France. A white man from France. Like we just built a relationship and a professional relationship. If I would call him and he would, he would advise me and help me think through challenges. So building relationships, so crucial, honestly, because that is also what helps open up opportunities. When you talk to people, they know who you are, where you're headed, they know you mean what you say, they know you are credible, you have integrity. They'll be on the lookout for things. When something comes up, they'll let you know. They'll call you and say, look, we've seen this, it fits your profile, apply for it. That's how things happen. And that's what sometimes people don't tell you. That, sometimes people will say, oh, it was all me, I'm great, I'm intelligent, I'm well-educated. No, it's not just that. It's really people helping one another. And those relationships matter. So I'm going to stop there because I know we're running out of time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Zainab. You have really, I think, answered majority of the questions that were posed here, some of which were, posed to you and Amma, but there's a thin line between academia and I think and a think tank, but you are an all-rounder and you've really given it your best shot. Thank you so, so much. I think there are a couple of some nuanced questions that individuals have here. Somebody asking, can I do a PhD after 14 years? Yes, you can. I did mine after 10 years of a master's. But what were you doing with the 14 years? What are you doing with them? And that might help you to actually take the maturity, that experience into a PhD, because a PhD is not really a walk in the park. So the other thing I think that's coming out of what you're saying, Zainab, and close to a question that somebody asked, like there's so many African women or otherwise coming to study abroad, and they feel that once they're there, they probably have this desire to stay, say in the US, the UK, or like off the African continent, but they feel that they are not really contributing a lot. I think you're actually thinking, your thinking is right, and this calls for knowing the maturity to know where your contribution lies. And it's not so far from where Zainab says. That's why she made the move from WB to wherever she is now. You're going to find yourself at a crossroads and say, where am I contributing most? Yeah, I was in Europe as well, but I say, you know what? No, Europe doesn't need me. They do have enough. In fact, the competition is stiff there, but Africa lacks skills. And so by moving back to Africa, you find that your demand is so high. The demand of you, they demand of you so much, and you're not letting go of your networks in Europe or the US, wherever you may be. They are there. You'll find yourself being more useful and contributing more. So when you feel that you've gotten to that point, just make sure that you go back to the continent and locate yourself in a place where you will contribute and still remain relevant. I mean, I'm in a university that is internationally known, and it has all these international connections, and I can still contribute. I mean, here I'm speaking to you, I speak to several, I retain my networks with think tanks and all of that. I feel that I contribute more on the continent than if I had stayed out there. So yes, let's go out, let's acquire that knowledge and go back home if possible. You may not necessarily go back to your country, but you're on the continent in an influential position where you can contribute. So I thought I would pull that out. Because we're running out of time, we thought we'd even get a little bit of a break. I'm going to request very quickly that we throw out a very brief poll. There is something that we need so we can close out. We apologize we didn't give you a leg stretch, but let's probably just, hey, take it all the way. After all, the ladies say we need to be bold and strong. So let's have this poll very quickly, and we might as well use the responses to that poll to provide some form of a closeout. But Amma, I'm hoping that when we get to that point, you'll also use that opportunity to respond to any of the questions that you might have picked up in the Q&A or the chat, because after the poll, we will be asking all our panelists to at least give us some parting words. If you had to speak to the little you, the girl that's out there, the lady that is out there, and say, I think I want to be where Amma is, I want to be where Zainab is, I want to be where Nomusa is. What are some of the, that one word or one takeaway that you give them in preparation for that? But first, let's take this poll and then see the responses there to that. So, meanwhile, I'll continue reading through and provide responses where I can to some of your questions.
And maybe, Elizabeth, I just would also like to give the floor to Daniel and Judith, because they've been raising their hand for a long time. And
pardon me, there is apologies for that. Yes, Daniel, there was also coffee. Yeah, I couldn't make out coffee's
keeping in
question.
mind that we're running out of time, so if the panelists, if you guys have to go, then just go, because I know that we are already 15 minutes late. So yeah, whenever you leave, just please do. But yeah, Judith and then Daniel maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, let's ask them to ask the questions. Then we carry on with this poll, and their responses we might get during that 1 minute parting points. Okay. So let's have your questions, Daniel, maybe first, and Kofi and Judith, three of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for giving me time to speak. My name is Dr. Ogachi Daniel from Kenya.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. First, I would like to applaud you, the presenters, for this wonderful presentation. It's quite very insightful. I would like to join more of this. My question goes to Usman. I just wanted to understand some of the contemporary or emerging issues, as well as the paradigm shifts that are shaping policy decisions, maybe in the African context or the global view. That is my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. Can we have Judith as well ask a question?
Hi, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I can't just believe that I'm speaking to Zainab. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so most of my questions have been answered, but I have one question that has not been answered really, and it relates to being a young woman, growing in your career, and how that relates to your social life in terms of marriage. I know it might sound obvious, but it's quite important to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I quickly cut through that question, but I saw it. Kofi, could we also get your question? Because I wasn't sure to whom it was addressed. If Kofi has been upgraded to a panelist. If not, then we can continue with our poll. Okay, so let's answer those questions. And Desiree, you help us to launch the results when they are ready. Thank you.
So let me quickly come in since two questions have been addressed to me or posed to me, and very quickly. In terms of new dynamics that are driving paradigm shifts, there are several, and of course they vary by country or by region, but there are definitely the mega trends that, for maybe 4 or 5 years now, different individual researchers, institutions have also identified. I think World Economic Forum, they've done a lot on mega trends, Deloitte as well, and also some academic publications have focused a bit on them, as well as our own work on the future of work in Africa, our publication that came out, I think it was last year that the final publication came out. Anyways, a couple of mega trends, including, geopolitical shifts as, the center of economic gravity shifts from the west to the east. That is coming, or that is associated with a lot of, I think, policy shifts. Policymakers are reconsidering their alliances. Trade patterns are changing as a result of that. You look at many African countries now, their main trade partner is China, not their former colonial power. So there's a lot going on there with geopolitical dynamics. That would be number one. Number two is, I mentioned trade, so it's probably a second one that you're seeing perhaps an interesting shift potentially towards deglobalization or discourse, maybe not a shift yet. The discourse, there are certain actors pushing for deglobalization, decoupling, around technology, around trade, around supply chains. I don't think that is going to happen, but there's a lot of discourse around that. But at a regional level, there's more trade integration, I would say. Obviously, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area for the African continent, but also Asia is integrating more and more. They've got all these regional economic agreements, regional economic partnerships, and things like that. So trade, the patterns there, the dynamics there are very, very interesting. Number three would be digital technologies, the fourth industrial revolution, the challenges and opportunities that presents to policymakers, to decision makers, I would say is potentially a third area. The fourth area is clearly climate change. And even for us at the Carnegie Endowment, the Africa program, climate change is a major area where we're doing a lot of work, and we're going to do a lot of work on that front. And then potentially maybe migration, patterns of migration. That is not a new thing. It's been ongoing, but when you're interacting with counterparts or policymakers from Europe, migration is like all they're seeing, right? It shapes so much. So those are some of the, I think, the trends that are causing, or that might cause paradigm shifts when it comes to policy, I would say. Then to Judith, good to speak with you. We've interacted a number of times over the past couple of years via LinkedIn. I think the question that you posed is a very, very important one. Personally, I try to avoid it for many reasons, because I'm single, I'm not married, and I try not to have strong views on that because it just gets very controversial. But I think something I will say, because there are a lot of young women, and I know there are a lot of young men on this call too, but for young women, and you're spot on, the higher up you go, like this is something I never used to think about. For me, growing up in Nigeria, despite the nature of my environment, I never felt I had any restrictions or anything, maybe because of my upbringing, my family. There were no restrictions placed on me as a woman. But now the higher up I'm going, the more interesting and in some ways challenging it becomes. So I give you an example now, and I say this with all modesty, but among all the think tanks in Washington, D.C., and there are many, I'm the youngest director. I'm one of maybe 2 or 3 Africans or people of African origin at this position. So I'm young, and then, you know, with my skin color, personally, like, I don't let that bother me, but sometimes you're in a meeting and it's just clear. Like, you're speaking to people who are maybe in their, I don't know, you know, however, late 40s, 50s, 60s. Yeah, sometimes it's a bit jarring, to be honest. And having that self-awareness matters because it also shapes the way you communicate with them. You can, because the way you communicate with your friends is not how you communicate at work. It's very, very different, right? So, and that's even at the professional level, but also at a personal level, then, you know, how you socialize, the things you're interested in, you realize that you are changing. You know, when I was in grad school, the way I was thinking was that once I graduate, I'll have the time to do all the things I'm not doing. But the thing is, I graduated and I had to work on my publications, you know, and then before I knew it, like, all of those things that I thought I would have the time to do, I was no longer interested in doing them. Also, with the nature of my work, even the things I'm interested in, they have changed. So I find myself often in the midst of people who are way older than me. So that again creates its own dynamic, and it's not an easy thing, but I try to be optimistic with every situation in life. Like, I just try to see the upside. I try not to focus on the challenges. So I think it's a question that is very, very valid, and I would say we don't spend enough time thinking about it, that, you know, certain decisions you make as a woman would really affect you know, some aspects of your personal life. And so it's something to think about carefully. I don't have a straightforward answer to that clearly. I'm just explaining my experience to you and what I've discovered, because nobody told me. So.
Thank you so much for that. That last question is really serious. I mean, if you ask me, I keep telling people, please make sure you've finished all that is required of you before you embark on a PhD, because a PhD tears you apart. It just, you know, pulls you in all directions, and you get to a point where you say, you know what, no, this isn't enough. I need to go back and find myself. So if you do not know where you want to be and what you want to do, you might just go with the flow, and that's what a PhD does to you, especially with beautiful networks. You'll just be called here, left, right, and center. And remember that we are few ladies in many of these professions. So as you stand out and you're doing your job, you've left this beautiful mark. Everybody will want a piece of you, and so you're torn apart. So thank you so much for that. Yes, let's just get back to that poll and try to wrap up. Briefly, did we finish that poll, Desiree? Please. We don't want to hold people here. Yes, so let's.
Yes,
oh
we
yeah,
have the results. Yeah.
All right. So the poll was quite a brief one. So how satisfied are you with the current policy environment in your country? And okay, 71% of us are saying you're not satisfied. Okay. While about 20% say they're satisfied. Okay, we're not going to ask for the distribution. Question number 2, how satisfied are you with policymakers in your country? Again, you're not satisfied. Goodness, this is up to 84%. This is in your country. We didn't ask which countries we're hailing from, but let's just leave it at that. Now, how willing are you to join the policy debate in your country? Wow, this is the first time me seeing this kind of a response, that 95% of us are willing to engage. And so this is very encouraging. And the question would then be, maybe the rest of the next question would have been, maybe the gap, your willingness, and you're not happy with those that are there. Is it easy for you? Maybe that would be the question. And perhaps somebody will quickly ask that, oh my goodness, no, it's not easy for us to even join the debate, even if we wanted to. So it is very important that we have at least people that are willing. It gives us momentum and motivation to continue with such debates and maybe take them a step further. Hannah has shared with you, platforms where you can engage with us so that we know the next level or the next webinar, we probably should be thinking about the tools that we need to equip ourselves to engage meaningfully with the policy debates that are happening in our countries, think tanks being part of them, our research being part of it. Perhaps we just don't know how to contribute, but good thing is we're willing. So in wrapping up this webinar, let's just quickly ask our panelists to just give us a 1-minute parting point or parting word for our audience. So quickly, I think Amma was a bit quiet for a while. So Amma, let me just open it up to you. What are some of the parting words? I think Zainab has had to leave politically, but yeah, we do understand that we're dealing with, we've actually gone beyond time. Amma, quickly, please. What are some of the parting points for those of our ladies and audiences that would want to get to where you are?
Okay, so thanks for a rich discussion, everyone. One thing I would suggest is perhaps Zainab's last point about the decisions that we make before all uncertainty is resolved. As you put it, Elizabeth, do everything you need to do before you do your PhD. That might be a worthwhile topic for another AAAWE forum. So I propose that. But more importantly, I just wanted to end by saying one of the things that I value a lot about being academia is intellectual freedom to pursue a whole range of questions. And one thing that I didn't see come up in our discussion is not only thinking about whether research affects policymakers, but thinking about other parts of society. And so the example I want to give is my work on religion, I think, might not directly be taken up by policymakers, but it's been taken up by a lot of other people. So people all across various parts of sub-Saharan Africa seeing religious changes in their countries and thinking, this is wonderful to have research that helps us think through what's going on in our lives. So this is individuals, it's think tanks, it's being called into churches to speak about my work. And so I just want to leave that with you all as thinking about one other avenue for the output of your work is just helping people understand how we live. And I think that's a worthy goal in itself too. So thank you to everyone. And of course, happy if anyone reaches out for more questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amma, for giving us your time. Really appreciated that and for those parting points. Nomusa, parting words for our ladies.
Yes, but before my parting word, there's been a question where they were saying we haven't said anything about challenging. Can I just go?
Yes, ma'am.
One.
Yes,
okay. One, people are getting tired of the gender equality trump card. So there's a need to repackage it. Then the second thing, we're seeing signs of reversal discrimination now as we implement the gender equality. And the third thing is politics. That's a dangerous zone. When it comes to policy, making and implementation, then it can become a hindrance. Then the other thing is experience counts in policy making. Sometimes we come up with policy or intervention measures which may not be implementable because we lack experience. Parting shot. On the parting shot side, I want to say for women or even those in policy, especially women, choose your battles. You don't fight everything. And secondly, is focus on your strengths. and remain positive. And third, apply soft aggression. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. I like the idea of choosing your battles carefully. Just because we have gender equality doesn't mean we are ready to get into the wrestling box. We can battle, intellectually. I think that's what I like. And I like what Amma said, that you have the intellectual freedom, you have the freedom to write about anything in academia. I concur with you. So that's a battle to pick. You can battle it out in the academic circles, but we are not yet ready for the wrestling box. Thank you very, very much, ma'am. You made me my laughter for the evening or for the day. So greatly, greatly appreciated. Like I said, please join us on the platforms and raise your questions there, your contributions, your suggestions, and we'll pick them up. Our panelists, if you're happy to share your details, they do want, they would like to get in touch with you, please do share in the chat box. We leave that to you. Otherwise, we will continue to engage and we will continue to bring you more of these webinars. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience and engaging. And we apologize if we have not answered your questions. I think there was a question on dealing with what is it? Was it cross-gender, something like that? My apologies. I think my screen is gone. So there are several things that we haven't touched on. We need to emphasize that even though, for instance, we say it's an advancement for African women economists, we do have men, so we do encourage, all interested parties that are interested in advancing, the cause of, women economists. We say women economists because the particular discipline is quite challenging, it's highly competitive, and it's predominantly men. So we wanted to create that space where we can empower our ladies. And like I said in the beginning, we empower them in many ways. So we do not discriminate. We do, if you look at our board on our website, www.AAAWE.org, you will see that our board is actually diverse. So we not discriminate. So we hope that you've gotten something out of it, some insights. Your mind's at ease now. You're choosing your battles carefully in terms of the disciplines, which channel, which avenue, which path are you taking? Academia, think tank, politics. That is the battle now we're talking about. So you're going in there, know the challenges that are out there. How can you overcome them? Because yes, you can. But most importantly, how can you engage with the debates in our countries? Thank you, Amma, for bringing up that religion aspect, because influencing policy doesn't, goes in various ways, and let's not forget, for those that are in the social sciences, religion and politics tend to go hand in hand. So when we talk about political economy, we are also including religion. We know how some of our politicians have actually used religion. They are the saviors, they are the messiahs, of the population, and they use that to either dominate or empower their people, and so on and so forth. So thank you so much. I'd like to wrap this up, and looking forward to engaging more with you. We will certainly reach out to you for more of these webinars. So thank you so much, and have a good evening or have a good afternoon wherever you are. Thank you so much to our panelists and to the audience. Cheers.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for attending too.
Thank you.
Good rest of the day and evening.
Bye.
And thank you, Amma, Nomusa, and Elizabeth. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye, Desiree.
Bye, Amma. Bye,
Bye.
Bye,
Thank you
Nomusa.
so much, Desiree, for the back office.
Thank you.
I hope we've been able to capture quite a lot on the
Yes.
side. Okay,
Okay,
thank you so much.
yeah,
So I'll catch up with you guys later. Let
Sure.
me leave as well. Bye-bye.
Bye. Mhm.